Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Today, we'll be going through our first session of the ProServeIT Academy for Cybersecurity. And we're going to be talking about what are the most important security aspects today, which is identity protection, and how easy it is for hackers these days to compromise your digital identity. My name is George Samra. I am a principal consultant and security practice lead here at ProServeIT. For the agenda today, first, we're going to do a very quick introduction around what is identity security and why it matters in today's world. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the key risks to identity and identity compromise specifically. And I'll walk you through what the attack looks like from a hacker's perspective. I'll also touch on what hackers typically do once they compromise your identity. So there is some sort of motive, there is some sort of next steps that the hackers have been planning, and I'll be sharing some insight on what we've been seeing throughout the customers that we perform breach investigations against. I'll be going through a very interesting demo later on. Now, the attack will be called adversary in the middle attack. I'll leave it at that for now, but we'll discuss what it is and how to prevent the attack as it's becoming more common as an advanced and more sophisticated type of attack that also targets multi-factor authentication. We'll go through some of the Microsoft 365 security solutions, how we can mitigate the adversary in the middle attack, what identity protection mechanisms does Microsoft have today, and they'll also be providing some recommendations as well. And then I'll be walking you with some offers that may interest you. So some of these offers are complimentary. They're either ProServeIT funded or Microsoft funded. So if you do reach out to us at the end requesting for us to run through any of these offers, we can confirm that you're eligible for them. And if not, we can let you know how much it would cost your organization to do. And last but not least, we will go through a Q&A session together to answer any questions that you might have, and I'll gladly answer them for you. All right, introduction to identity security. So what is identity security? Now, a simple description for this would be ensuring that only authorized users can access the systems and data. Now, keep in mind, that's just a small description of what identity security is, but it's way more than that. That just helps us to try to understand if you have approval to access something, you should be able to access it. But then comes the part of how are we accessing it? Is it being accessed in a secure manner or not? What device is being used to access the resources? And should that device be allowed or not? So even though the description is quite simple, the implementation and management and governance of identity security are not. Another thing that identity security is a key part of is that it's a part of that zero trust architecture that you've probably heard many times before. Now, in a zero trust architecture, access is granted based on the identity of the users and the devices rather than your network location. Maybe it was your office space. So historically, you were in your office, you're sitting there, that's potentially considered a safe location. But now, as people work abroad, work remotely, there's many different systems accessing your environment, your office space is not that secure location anymore. So to make sure that there's some sort of continuous verification process, regardless of where you're accessing your content from. So zero trust also makes sure that the access to the resources is restricted to only what is necessary for that user or device, thus reducing the attack surface. So for example, something called lateral movement. So if you're hacked, you're compromised, and you're using the same credentials, you have access to this computer, you have access to your other servers. Now, what's stopping the hacker from jumping from your computer to your other servers in your environment, or even to Microsoft 365, to your emails, etc.? That is considered lateral movement. You're going up, potentially finding different avenues to maybe get the best admin access that you can within the environment, and then exposing that or using the vulnerabilities within that stronger admin access to perform additional risky things in the business. Making sure that you have access to the device or the user that's accessing the content is crucial, and it's restricted only to what the user needs. Again, if a user has access to everything in the organization and that account is compromised, expect the hacker to have access to everything as well. So we want to follow that least privileged method, meaning you need access to this one server, we'll give you access to that one server. Let's not give you access to everything in the environment, because it's easier for us to just say, you know what, let's give them domain admin rights, let's give them global admin rights, and everything will just work. That's the easy way out. that's not the right thing to do in security. You want to identify what resources they need access to, for how long they need access for, and give them the least privilege method. Is it security reader, security user admin, password reset admin? So try to find the least privileged account access that the user needs in order to perform their job, to perform their duties. Right? Another thing around why identity security matters is that over 80% of breaches involve credential theft. And I think that might not be general knowledge, but I think people can assume that would be the case because the very first step of a compromise is somebody needs your username and password. They need to log in on your behalf. Let's just say ransomware as an example. So if we're talking a malware that encrypts your devices, encrypts the contents on your devices, and now hackers request a ransom to give you back your data. If that's the case, they don't necessarily need access to your credentials. They just need somebody to click on a link to download a file. That file will be malicious. It'll encrypt your device. And now if you want your data back, you have to pay whatever ransom and whatever cryptocurrency they're asking for. And in a lot of ransomware attacks, hackers do steal your credentials off your devices as well. Because credentials are stored in your computer's memory, that's one way hackers can extract the information, extract the passwords in clear text, can know exactly what they are, and eventually use them to access your other services, the other areas within your company. All right, so one thing to keep in mind about security is that it's never a one and done deal. We have to keep up with the technology and where it's taking us. So for example, when we talk about the security perimeter, in the past, that was pretty much our firewalls, right? So historically, remote workers wasn't that big of a thing until COVID hit. That's when we started to see a huge increase in remote work and users being outside of their physical offices. So that was our perimeter. That was the perimeter of our security way back when. We configured the firewalls to prevent hackers from breaking in because we have our servers within our data centers. We have all our computers, all our users within the data centers. And that's how we prevented hackers from breaking in. Now, as time progressed and technology progressed as well, we now have remote employees, we have applications in the cloud, mobile users, vendors, contractors, accessing our data, accessing our environment. We're now in a hybrid cloud, so we still have content on-prem or within our data centers. We have other content in the cloud, and we have people using their own personal devices. And what that means and what the risks are, we'll discuss those in just a bit. But all this to say is that the perimeter is no longer our office. We're working from everywhere. External vendors and contractors are accessing our content, our data. We need to find a way to protect that. And that's where the identity becomes your new perimeter. So it's the username, your passwords, and not just that. It's not just your accounts. It's also the devices that you use to log in, which is part of your identity, your new identity. All right, so what are some of the key risks to identity in Microsoft 365? So first and foremost, credential phishing. I'm sure almost every single one of you, if not all, has received some sort of phishing email in the past, whether it's to your personal account, whether it's to your corporate account. For those that don't know, a phishing email is an email that comes through with a link that's disguised to make you think that you're logging into a certain application to a certain service, but it's not a legitimate service. It's just a disguised link for the hackers to steal your username and password to eventually break into your account and log in. Now, if you really are a targeted organization, then hackers might even target your personal account, knowing that you probably don't have as much of a security implementation as you do on your corporate side of things. But again, everybody experiences phishing or a variation of phishing. I believe somebody in the chat mentioned on their mobile devices as well. So there are different types of phishing. Some of them are called vishing, which is voicemail phishing. There's smishing, which is SMS phishing, because on a phone, it's harder to detect a malicious link or not. And they typically happen around, let's say, holiday seasons, tax seasons. Hey, there's a parcel here at Canada Post as an example, waiting for you to pick it up. Click on this link. You can sign into your account and then they'll compromise your credentials. You receive this Interact transfer. Click here to accept the funds from the government. None of that really happens in reality. You just have to stay aware on who's sending you what and just know that government entities or Canada Post will never send you a text to tell you, click on this link to do this and that. Right? Then there's the adversary in the middle attack. So this is one of the items that we're going to be demoing today. So this is part of phishing. So it is a phishing attack. You will receive a link to click on. But the difference between this and a regular phishing attack is that most of the time it comes from a legitimate source. So somebody that has been hacked before. And what this attack does is it bypasses MFA. So a lot of people think that, oh, I have MFA, I'm secure, I'm good. That's not the case. Even if you do have MFA enabled, and we'll show that in just a second, that hackers will find a way to use adversary in the middle attacks to bypass your MFA, steal your session tokens, your session cookies, and use those to log in on your behalf. Obviously, another key risk is that there's no MFA in secure access. All they need is a username and password. Now, yes, there are ways to bypass MFA. However, we still do see a lot of attacks where they're not adversary in the middle attack. They got phished. They try their credentials. We do operate a security operations center here at ProServeIT, and we do notify our clients and prevent or contain the threat. We reset passwords, block accounts, revoke access to kick the hackers out, et cetera, et cetera. So no MFA is a huge no in security. That is the number one line item in every gap analysis that we do. And last but not least, this is not the extent of the list, but unmanaged devices, open access to all endpoints. Think of it in a sense where you're providing corporate devices to your users, and for whatever reason, they're using their personal devices. Now, you don't manage those personal devices, but you can manage the corporate ones. You can deploy a device management solution like Intune, for example, to say, here are the minimum standards, minimum requirements for this laptop to access our environments. It needs to have BitLocker enabled for encryption. You need to have a PIN, your biometrics enabled, so that way you can scan your face or your thumbprint to log in. You need to have your firewalls enabled. You need to have an EDR solution like Microsoft Defender for Endpoint installed with no risks on it. So you can put in what your minimum compliance requirements are. But from a personal device, again, because we're saying devices becoming your identity as well, not just your username and password, personal devices, you don't control their security. You don't even know if they have an antivirus or an EDR solution in place. You don't know if they have pirated applications that are riddled with malware, or maybe some dormant malware that's just sitting there waiting to connect and phone back home in order to exploit the malware and eventually traverse from your personal device over to your corporate environment. Unmanaged devices is a huge security risk today to a lot of organizations, given that a lot of users use their personal devices to access corporate resources as well. All right, so an adversary in the middle attack. How does it work? What is the skeleton behind it? So first and foremost, you're going to need an attacker. It always starts off with somebody wanting to be malicious. This is not a coincidence or something that just happens. No, this is a targeted attack. Somebody needs something from you, either to steal your credentials or to do something with those credentials. So the first step, typically for an adversary attack to work, adversary in the middle attack to work, is they want to compromise some sort of user that is trusted. So in this case, through a phishing email, they've compromised a trusted source. Let's just say I'm that trusted source. I got compromised. Somebody sent me a phishing link. I clicked on it. I provided my credentials. Now the hacker has access to my environment. Now, what are they going to do is they're going to create a link, a phishing link, that is going to lead to a sign-in page, depending on what they're trying to attack. So that could be your Microsoft environment. That could be your banking accounts. That could be anything really, depending on what the hacker's motive is. So they will create that adversary in the middle phishing page used to steal your session cookies. Now, your session cookies are store your login information in them. So once you've logged in and you've successfully logged in, those session cookies verify to your browser that, hey, the correct user logged in, they used MFA, everything's stored in this browser. Don't ask me again to authenticate if I click on things within the web page. I don't want to authenticate every time I switch from Outlook to maybe SharePoint, OneDrive. All that is stored within your session cookies. So once the attacker has those session cookies, they proceed to your emails. That's Out of all the breach investigations that we've done, that's typically their first entry point. They read your emails, they add malicious inbox rules. You know how you create your inbox rules to say, hey, if an email came in from George, move it to a folder called George. They perform similar tactics. So if an email comes through and we're saying any email, mark the email as read. So you don't receive any notifications on your phones, on your Outlook. Move it to the RSS feeds folder or the conversation history folder, which are folders that anybody rarely uses. Just again, to hide their tracks. So if somebody's sending this person an email, it's automatically going to go read, move to the folder, and that way the user does not see it. Now, the reason they do that is because they typically send out phishing campaigns from that person's mailbox. And they don't want the user to notice that this email came in from somebody suspecting, hey, did you actually send this to me? Is this legitimate? They don't want people to suspect the hacker's been in your environment. So they do that to hide their tracks. Then they add an MFA method. So even though you already have MFA, it all gets bypassed. And now hackers add their own MFA method to remain persistent. So that way they can generate their own session creation cookies. So that way they can maintain access to your account, even if you reset your password. So a lot of people think, oh, I've reset my password, I'm safe. That's not the case. You want to revoke your session cookies from Entra ID in this case, in order to kick the hackers out and have them re-authenticate. So if they need to log back in, they have to hack you once more. And that's when the business email compromise campaign happens. So what is this exactly? It's sending malicious emails from this trusted source, this trusted user, to all the external recipients this user has and all the internal users that they've communicated with. Now, a lot of times they remain dormant in your environment, so that way they can, figure out what your communication style is. So how does this person communicate? Maybe who approves invoices if they're after your financials, right? So it's not always an immediate attack. A lot of times they stay dormant in your environment to try and see what's my next step. So then once they try to send emails to external recipients, internal users, that's another campaign. And then it's just rinse and repeat pretty much. So they've compromised this organization, then they've compromised this organization, maybe multiple users. And now from those multiple users, they're compromising many other organizations. If you see an email from george@gmail.com, you might think that's a phishing email compared to seeing it george@ProServeIT.com, where it's a credible domain, credible source. So you might eventually click on things rather than questioning where it came from. All right, so that gives the hacker the ability to gain control over multiple organizations. And if anybody has any admin rights, then unfortunately, hackers take ownership of that domain and cause a lot of damage to the organization. All right, so what do hackers do after they've compromised your cloud identity? First and foremost, they access your emails. They read a lot of your emails. They access your files that are stored in SharePoint or OneDrive. They see, are there any financial information that I can gain access to? They monitor your activities, your communication style. Again, who approves invoices? And we've seen this time and time again with breach investigations. If they know, for example, who the CFO is in the company, and again, this has happened to a lot of nonprofits, unfortunately. It's sad when we see nonprofits work really hard for a specific cause and now they get targeted because of bad actors out there and they don't really care about who those nonprofits are. There's a lot of invoices that get paid to those hackers, to those bad actors, and it's really difficult to get that money back. So they monitor who approves invoices and try to spoof or impersonate the user and say, you know what, I'm going to be in a meeting for the next 4 hours. These are invoices that I need to get paid out ASAP. Please pay them. And who's going to question the CFO? If that comes through from the CFO or somebody impersonating the CFO, most of the time the accounting team will be paying those invoices. And as we mentioned, so those business email compromise phishing campaigns happen from that trusted source. So they send them to internal and external accounts, trying to compromise them as well, like a snowball effect. They send malware, attempting to infect other machines, maybe to demand some sort of ransom. And they also search for passwords stored in emails, SharePoint, and OneDrive. It's a simple search in your Outlook, simple search in SharePoint and OneDrive for the keyword password or credentials. And you'll be surprised how many users store their credentials in SharePoint and OneDrive. Again, part of our SOC, we do receive a lot of alerts of our clients and their users storing credentials and passwords in OneDrive and SharePoint. So that's just another avenue to say, all right, I gain access to this one account. There's this Excel file with all these passwords. Now I have access to other areas in the business. All right, now let's do a demo for the adversary in the middle attack. So first and foremost, this is my phishing server, if you want to call it that. We're going to be creating a link. All right, and this link, as you can see here, there's a domain called MicrosoftOfficeOnline.com. Now, to the naked eye, this could look like a legitimate domain, but if you look closely, you can see here that there's two T's right after Microsoft. So there's Microsoft and then there's an extra T. If somebody doesn't notice this, then this can pretty much fool them. Right, so I'm going to enable the phishing page for Office 365. Unhide it. All right, so now I have this phishing link. All right, I'm going to just impersonate a user. So I'm going to go in. Let me just open up a VPN from Russia just to simulate a hacker logging in. All right, now we're connected. Just to confirm the IP is showing us from outside of Canada. There you go, Russia. All right, so portal.office.com. Sorry, let's go to the actual phishing page. So again, here you can see the two T's. This is the link that I had generated from my phishing server here. And you can see here, there's a new visitor has arrived. So somebody clicked on this link, which is me. Now it's a little bit slow just because I am being routed through the VPN. But this device, as you can see here, this is not Intune enrolled whatsoever. I'm not connected to any account in any organization. This is purely a local account, right? And now I'm going to log in with this user called Adelv. So I'm going to click on the account. I'm going to type in their password and I'm going to be prompted for MFA. And you can see I typed in the incorrect password. It did not let me through. So it's looking for the correct password. And now I got the prompt on my phone, just as a regular user. I'm logging in with MFA. Done. And if we take a look at our phishing server here, you can see here's the username, here's the password. And now I'm just going to click no. So that way it doesn't ask me, I don't want to stay signed in. All right, now all authorization tokens intercepted. The cookies have been stolen. All right, and then it redirects me to portal.office.com because that is here. You can see the redirecting URL. I've just set it, go to portal.office.com. So the user can think, wait, I just logged in, maybe it failed. Let me try it again. Now that I have the session cookies, it's as simple as typing in sessions. I can see my session cookies here. They've been captured. And this is session ID 7. So session 7, here's the cookies. I'm going to take those cookies. You can see I'm not logged in. Portal.office.com, not logged in. I'm going to delete all the cookies from the site and I'm going to import the session cookies that I just stole. All I'm going to do is refresh the page, portal.office.com. And you can see trying to sign you in. And now as the hackers throughout this adversary in the middle attack, I've logged in to Adele Vance's account just by taking her session cookies. And you've seen how long it took me to do this. So it's pretty simple. Now I'm in Adele's account. I'm going to go in, add another MFA method to remain persistent. Now I can do whatever I want. I can access their email. I can access their SharePoint, their OneDrive, and that session cookie remains active. All right. Now, how can we prevent this? To answer Thomas's question, we have a device called Windows 11 VM. It's right here. This device is Intune enrolled and it's compliant. So this device is a corporate device. I've Intune enrolled it. I've created some compliance configuration profiles to say the bare minimum have have local firewall enabled, have Defender for endpoints deployed, have biometrics enabled. So you can put whatever compliance requirements that you want on your computers or your laptops or your phones, etc. So in this case, I'm just demoing it from a Windows 11 VM. Once the devices are Intune enrolled and compliant, you create a conditional access policy that says, if your device is Intune enrolled and compliant, then allow access to the tenants, then allow access to the content within the environment. So I've selected specific users. I'm just targeting Adele Vance in this instance, just for this demo. Against all cloud apps, something that we see time and time again is that clients select only specific cloud apps, which is not the right thing to do. You can select all cloud apps and exclude specific applications if they're not supported. And then from a grant access perspective, you want to grant permission or grant access, but you want to require the device to be marked as compliant. And this is with Intune. So you're Intune enrolled, it's compliant, there's green check marks everywhere. Only then you're allowed access to corporate resources. Now you can take this a step further as well and say, if you don't have Intune enrolled devices, maybe they're hybrid AD joined or hybrid Entra joined, which means that the device is joined to your local Active Directory, your domain controllers, and it's also joined to Entra ID, to the cloud. So either or, you can select down here, require one of the selected controls to pass, and you're good to go. Depending on where you deploy your policies from, maybe it's through Intune, maybe it's through your GPOs on your domain controller, and then depending on your risk tolerance. For now, I'm just going to say require device to be marked as compliant. All right, and I'm going to turn this on. So I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for this to work. This device is Intune enrolled. Oops, not the right one. There we go. All right, so this device is Intune enrolled. It's connected to this demo Contoso tenant that I'm logging in with through Adele Vance. You can see here that its last sync was 10:18 a.m. this morning. It's connected to my tenant. It is being managed by Contoso, by the Microsoft tenant that I'm working with. So this device is a managed device. Now, if I want to log in, let's go back to this portal here. Let's sign out and we'll sign back in. But this time, because this computer, as I said, is not Intune enrolled, so the conditional access policy that I've just configured is going to block me from logging in. So I'm going to log into Adele Vance's account again. Now, hopefully the policy kicked in. Usually it takes a few minutes for it to fully kick in, but we'll give it a try anyways. Logging in, MFA. There you go. Now you cannot get there from here because the devices or applications does not meet Contoso's compliance policy. Right? Now, typically for the Firefox browser, you're supposed to have single sign-on enabled, which I do, just to show you the settings there. Single sign-on is enabled, but I was not able to get there because, again, this device is not Intune enrolled, so it's not able to pick up the single sign-on from Intune over to the browser. But on this device, this is part of the demo that we're going to complete right now, is this device is Intune enrolled, it is compliant, it is a trusted device, and I'm going to log in right now. So this device is not going to be prompted for MFA, as you had stated in your question, because in this browser, I'm logged in through Adele Vance's account. As you can see, no MFA request. Same thing with Firefox. I do have SSO enabled, just to confirm. There it is. So as I go to portal.office.com, no MFA. So it is a trusted device. It is Intune enrolled. It is compliant. Now, as you can see here, I'm able to log in because this is an Intune enrolled device. It is compliant. And at the end of the day, there's no reason to steal the session cookies from this one because they're already logged in. If I was to take the session cookies from this Intune enrolled device and put it on anywhere else that's not Intune enrolled, not compliant with our policies, then the access will be blocked. There's another question there. So is there a way to allow an app like Outlook on a user's personal device, such as their phones, with conditional access policy? Yes, there is for now. In your conditional access policy, there's another section there for mobile phones specifically. So there's BYOD, so bring your own devices, and then there's corporate devices. For corporate devices, these are the policies that we recommend. For the BYOD side of things, there's here, require approved client app, require app protection policy. This means that the app must be protected by Intune. So the device is not really Intune enrolled. It's enrolled as a BYOD. It's not Intune enrolled as a corporate device. So you won't have access to anything on the user's device outside of the corporate applications that you want to deploy. So if you deploy Outlook, you push out Outlook through Intune. Now Outlook is being managed by your company policies. Everything else will be part of the user's own device. So if they use other applications, you have no business being in there, then that's just about it. But using the app protection policies, there's a list of apps that Microsoft does protect, primarily all the Microsoft apps pretty much. And if you review this list, you can see that Outlook is there, Teams is there, SharePoint, OneDrive, et cetera, et cetera. And you can control those through that policy that I just mentioned to you. All right. All great questions. Perfect. And that concludes the demo. So we showed you how you get blocked from logging in if you're not on an Intune enrolled device that's not compliant, that's not managed by your company. Think of this as a personal device logging in. So hackers, even if they steal your session cookies, you're not able to log in. And we showed you how you can log in from an Intune enrolled compliant device, even if you don't have MFA enabled, or you don't, because it's a trusted device, you're not presented with MFA, you're still going to be able to log in. All right. Back to our webinar, our part. So what are some solutions for identity protection? So again, as I just mentioned, the 3 steps to mitigate this is, first and foremost, enroll your devices into Intune. You can have a very basic compliance policy, but at least have something in there to say these are the minimum requirements. Create a conditional access policy to block access to unmanaged devices. Anything not managed by Intune, you want to block. And then eventually attackers will be blocked. They cannot steal your session cookies and will not be able to log in. Now, there is some licensing requirements here. Intune comes with Microsoft 365 Business Premium for the SMB space. It comes with M365 E3s, E5s, the EMS environment standalone. You can purchase them through different bundles or different solutions to get Intune. And the conditional access policy requires Entra ID Premium 1. Fairly quickly now, we're just pretty much highlight some of the security technologies that Microsoft has to offer. First and foremost, this is not the full list of Microsoft identity solutions. These are just some of the solutions that you can use. MFA is a no-brainer. Conditional access policies to govern where and how people are using your credentials or the devices to log into your environment. Defender for identity if you have a domain controller, it can protect your domain controllers and alert you. Microsoft Sentinel we use that as part of our SOC. And we monitor our clients' environments to see where are the attacks coming from and how can we help block them, so on and so forth. So this is not the full list of solutions. There's geolocation policies through conditional access policies. There's a lot that can be done for identity security. It's just about making it harder for hackers to break through. High-level recommendations. First and foremost, implement MFA. Yes, I did show you how you can bypass MFA, but still, we do see a lot of attacks that are not adversary in the middle attack. They're just regular phishing attacks. And with MFA enabled, that will eventually block those types of attacks. And if MFA cannot be implemented, let's say it's a service account, it's a shared account, it's a former employee, there's something that's preventing you from applying MFA, there are other mitigation techniques. You want to use conditional access policies to govern access to the environment from all the cloud apps. As I stated, there could be some exceptions here and there, maybe because an app doesn't support certain situations or certain scenarios, but at least try to cover all your cloud apps. Enroll your devices to Intune and only require Intune enrolled devices access. And last but not least, educate your users, because you can invest so much into security. It all starts with your end users. They're typically the weakest link in the organization, and they can eventually get compromised just by clicking on a link because they're misinformed and they're not trained well enough to detect them. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a great rest of the day.